Hello, my name's John Barnes. I'm from Fertilizer New Zealand, and it's my privilege to be here today to discuss fertilizers and the way things work in our lives here in New Zealand. I've been in this industry now for the best part of 30 years, and 17 of those years is with Fertilizer New Zealand. I set the company up because I could see that there was things that we could be doing differently, and I wanted to actually not just talk about what we could do, but actually have the functionality to do those things. So I spent quite a bit of time traveling around the world to actually find these products and introduce them to New Zealand farmers. The one thing that we all have in common as farmers is soil. Our soils are made up from different elements. Some are clay, some are alluvial, some are whatever they happen to be. However, we all have soil. And so it's the way we look after our soils or treat our soils that we get the production. Now, for the last 100 years or more, 150 years now, that we have been using a lot of chemical on our soil that isn't that great. To get the best production, we needed to apply phosphate, potash, sulfur, nitrogen, calcium, magnesium, whatever it was that actually was missing in our soils. However, that has become a preoccupation, so we're actually now using a lot more of these elements and getting not that much more production. On top of that, we've got a lot more pests and diseases than we've ever had, and we keep spraying for them and knocking them out, but they're coming back even in greater numbers and causing more problems. So if this system was to work, it should have worked by now. We should have actually, with the billions of dollars that we've spent on all the things that we've done to improve production, we should have reached utopia. However, we haven't. And so my thinking is that we need to go back to some of the things and look at the soil and work out what it is that's missing. So when we look at making a program for a farmer, we don't just look at how much nutrient there is in the soil. We don't just look at how much carbon or organic matter in the soil. We don't just look at the soil biology, but we actually look at the whole soil as a holistic ecosystem, one that actually is working in a cooperative way. The current situation in the soil is this on many farms. We've got compacted soils, and so we're getting new and flashy gear to actually break up the soils and make them less compacted. But that doesn't always work, because as soon as it starts raining and the conditions come to, it rains or whatever, they just get put back together again and it becomes compacted again. We've got phosphate being leached out of the soils and into the waterways. We've got nitrogen disappearing as well, which is a problem to the farmer because, number one, he is buying nitrogen which he's not even using, so we should be working on how we can stop that. We're losing topsoil. Scientists are telling us we're losing more topsoil than we're actually creating, so we're actually losing our fertile soils. So how do we actually fix some of these things? Well, we need to start healing the soils. We need to start taking the carbon back out of the atmosphere and into the soils. And how do we do that? Well, that's why we have microbes. That's why we need to introduce the microbes back into the soil and get the microbes and fungi to be part of the glue to hold the topsoil together. And that way we can actually begin to turn the soil around. So in one particular case, I put them into a paddock where it had been turned over and there hadn't been a lot of life left in the soil. Once we applied the microbes to the soil, we got the grass growing again, even though we put no more nutrients in there, and the nutrients had already been there, But once we got the microbes and the life back into the soil, everything happened. Microbes are little beings that scurry around in the soil, and they have a whole range of jobs to do. Some are to pick up nutrients and bring them to various places. Others take nitrogen out of the atmosphere and put it into soil. Others actually create nitrogens for the clovers. There's a whole range of things that they do, and we could actually spend a whole lecture time talking just about that. Then you've got the fungi that go and have threads that go out around into the soil and bind the soil particles together, but also they bring nutrients towards the root systems of the plant, and some of them even hook into the root system of the plant and then draw nutrients into the root system and into the plant itself. And then of course there's the rhizosphere, which is the atmosphere around the root system, and there's a whole bunch of microbes and fungi that are there that work along with the root system to actually put nutrients into the plant. Some of the microbes actually ingest nutrients as well, which is like your nitrogen, your phosphate, your potash, your sulfur, calcium, magnesium, and turn it into plant available material. And if they do that, that nutrient then is sitting there waiting for the root system to come along and take it up and put it in. So there is a synergetic effect going on within the soil. So all these nutrients that are in the soil and have been ingested by the microbes are sitting in the soil and cannot be leached out because they are now part of the soil profile. And if they're part of the soil profile, they're not going to disappear, and they're there. If it's not used for this season, it will be there for next season. So it becomes a complete and total system that is good for the soil, good for the plant, good for the planet, and good for us. So if we get the soils correct with the right amount of microbes in there, or a good amount of microbes in there, and have the right amount of nutrients in there, and it has carbon and organic matter in the soil, then the grasses will grow well, and they will take up a balanced amount of nutrients. If the plants have a right amount of nutrients, that is, whether it is a horticulture crop, whether it's grassland farming, whether it's any type of farming situation, if the plant has the right amount of nutrients and it's growing to its capacity, then whatever either eats that or we eat the produce from it, we will be healthy, or the animals will be healthy. If it's the animals that are grazing this pasture, then we're getting better milk, we're getting better wool, we're getting better meat, and of course we consume either the meat or the milk or we wear the wool, and that will be better for us as well. So everything is connected to everything else. We are part of an ecosystem that is worldwide. This is something that we are all connected to each other, whether we are here in New Zealand or around the world. All of us are part of this one massive ecosystem. And it all comes back to the soil, of course, doesn't it? It comes back to actually making sure that we have the right amount of nutrients sitting in the soil, and that we're actually growing the right pastures to suit the climate and everything else. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciated being here today, and good luck with your farming.